Human Saga, DarkSec Black Ops. Chapter 2. A Tale of Two Powers. The TDS Sovereign Wrath drifted through the endless dark like a silent predator, her hull swallowing starlight and reflection alike. Decades of service had proven her design beyond question. Every scar, every weld, every faint vibration in her frame spoke not of age, but of mastery. She was a thief's masterpiece. The Sovereign Wrath was not born from one war, but from all of them. Her bones were a patchwork of stolen brilliance, alien alloys fused with human ingenuity, propulsion systems reverse-engineered from the wrecks of fallen empires, and stealth plating that bent light and radar, as if the ship herself refused to be seen. Engineers of the Terran Defense Division had scavenged the galaxy's battlefields, taking what worked, discarding what didn't, until they created something that no single civilization could have imagined alone. She was the vessel that changed everything. Before her, Earth's ships had been lumbering giants, crewed by thousands and built for endurance rather than elegance. The Sovereign Wrath shattered that tradition. Its design reduced the crew by more than 90%, favoring a smaller, more agile team capable of rapid adaptation. Though vast, stretching longer than 4 professional football fields, the ship was crafted for precision, not presence. Built primarily for stealth operations, she was a ghost among the stars, slipping through enemy lines unseen, striking with surgical efficiency, and vanishing before sensors could even register her existence. In her decades of service, she had known only 2 captains. The current one, Captain Marcus Lowe, had commanded her for 22 years. Under Lowe's hand, the Sovereign Wrath became legend. Engagement after engagement ended the same way, swift, decisive, and utterly one-sided. Enemies across the stars never understood how a species they dismissed as primitive could wield such cunning. Most alien powers had written humanity off as barbaric backwater dwellers, loud, impulsive, and technologically inferior. That was the image Earth had allowed them to believe. The misunderstanding served as a mask that let ships like the Sovereign Wrath move unseen until it was far too late. But the Sovereign Wrath was more than a weapon. It was the blueprint for a new era. Her revolutionary design became the foundation of the modern Terran fleet. No longer dependent on reverse-engineered alien technology, Earth's engineers had taken what they learned and forged their own path. The result was a fleet 30 times more powerful than anything humanity had fielded before. Where once humans had won wars through desperation and ingenuity, now they dominated them with technology that evolved faster than any enemy could adapt. Every new destroyer, cruiser, and carrier bore the legacy of the Sovereign Wrath: self-learning systems, adaptive AI combat networks, and modular weapon arrays that could reconfigure mid-battle. Humanity had become what the galaxy feared most: a species that learned from every defeat, perfected every victory, and never stopped improving. The bridge of the Sovereign Wrath was the heart of that philosophy. A dim, circular chamber, alive with shifting light. Tactical displays painted the faces of the crew in pale blue and amber, reflections sliding across steel and glass like restless ghosts. Every station, communications, weapons, sensors, was within reach of the command dais, designed so that no order had to travel far. Beyond the main deck, the command conference room waited, its walls lined with holographic projectors, ready to conjure entire fleets into being. And behind that, tucked away like a secret, was the captain's conference room, a private sanctum for decisions that could end worlds. The Sovereign Wrath was more than a ship. She was a philosophy made metal. That victory belonged not to the pure, but to the adaptable. She carried within her the DNA of 100 conquered technologies, a living testament to humanity's refusal to stop learning, even from its enemies. And so she drifted through the void, silent and patient, her engines whispering against the dark. Somewhere deep within her hull, the hum of her systems was almost like a heartbeat, steady, cold, and waiting. In the black between stars, the Sovereign Wrath hunted still. At the center of the bridge stood Captain Marcus Lowe, tall, broad-shouldered, and composed, with the kind of presence that made a room fall silent. 60 years old, his salt-and-pepper beard was trimmed to military precision, his hair cut short, his eyes sharp and cold as the void. Every line on his face told a story of battles survived and victories earned. He was a man who didn't need to prove he could win. He simply knew he could. 22 years had passed since Lowe first took command of the TDS Sovereign Wrath. His rise had not come through ambition, but through fire. During the Battle of Glett, the ship had been on the brink of annihilation. Enemy fleets surrounded them, communications were severed, and their commanding officer was killed in the opening barrage. In that chaos, then Commander Lowe assumed command. What followed became legend. Against impossible odds, he rallied the crew, outmaneuvered a force 3 times their size, and turned what should have been a catastrophic defeat into one of the most decisive victories in Terran history. In recognition of that victory, Earth Command granted him permanent command of the Sovereign Wrath. Admiralty promotions followed, first to Rear Admiral, then to Fleet Admiral, but Lowe declined them all. The stars were his home, and the bridge of the Sovereign Wrath was where he belonged. He had no desire for a desk, no patience for politics. His loyalty was to the ship, her crew, and the endless dark beyond. Beside him stood Commander Oues, his first officer, a Vorlon-born being whose presence was as still as deep water. His skin carried a soft tan luminescence beneath the bridge lights, and his eyes glowed faintly violet, reflecting the shifting tactical data that danced across the displays. When Oues spoke, his voice was calm and melodic, a striking contrast to the clipped, precise tones of the human officers around him. Commander Oues owed Captain Lowe more than allegiance. He owed him his very life. During the Battle of Glett, the enemy's advance had threatened not only the Sovereign Wrath, but Oues's own homeworld, nicknamed by the Terrans as Vorlon Prime. The Vorlon were a race of extraordinary beauty, graceful, luminous beings whose physical form seemed sculpted from living light. That beauty, however, had drawn the envy and cruelty of the so-called high races. They sought to enslave the Vorlon, to twist their elegance into servitude, to turn a proud and ferocious people into objects of pleasure and submission. For a species born of strength and spirit, such degradation was a perversion of their very essence. The high races never revealed themselves directly. They used intermediaries, mercenary armies, pirate fleets, and opportunistic species to carry out their will. No one ever discovered which civilization truly desired the Vorlon, only that vast forces struck without warning or mercy. Armies of hired killers descended upon Vorlon settlements, capturing and selling them across the stars. Humanity and its coalition allies spent years freeing the captured, dismantling the slave networks, and hunting those who profited from the trade. Among the worst offenders were the Grek, a race of crab-like humanoids encased in thick, chitinous armor and feared throughout the galaxy. They began by establishing so-called work colonies for the Vorlon, claiming to offer refuge and employment. In truth, they were abducting entire communities, forcing them into servitude, and executing any who resisted. Thousands were murdered in cold blood. Other species followed the GREK's example, their cruelty even darker, their motives more depraved. When the high races descended upon Vorlon Prime, no one came to their defense, until humanity did. The Terrans, alongside their coalition of 3 allied races, fought with a ferocity that stunned the galaxy. They did not fight for conquest or gain, but for the simple, defiant belief that no species should face extinction or enslavement alone. Humanity's willingness to lay down their lives for another race, to bleed for a people not their own, became the defining act that reshaped galactic history. To the Vorlon, this was what made humanity so profoundly endearing. Their reckless courage, their empathy, their refusal to stand aside in the face of injustice. Overnight, the Vorlon became one with the Terran coalition, bound not by treaty or necessity, but by shared blood and honor. For Commander Oues, standing beside Captain Lowe, was more than service. It was reverence. The man who had saved his world now commanded the ship that symbolized the unity of their peoples. Together, they stood as living proof of what the galaxy had once thought impossible. That compassion, when wielded with courage, could be as powerful as any weapon forged in war. Commander Oues looked at his controls and stared upward at the command screen. Captain Lowe stood by his side, contemplating the mission below. Lieutenants Riley sat at comms, Penrose at sensors, Steelman at navigation. The bridge was quiet except for the steady hum of the ship's systems and the faint pulse of distant comms traffic. Riley's fingers moved quickly across her console, filtering through encrypted transmissions from the surface teams. Penrose's display flickered with shifting energy signatures, the sensor grid sweeping the planet's atmosphere in wide arcs. Steelman adjusted the ship's orbit by fractions, keeping the Sovereign Wrath steady above the turbulent clouds. Every officer worked in unspoken rhythm, the tension of the mission pressing down like the weight of deep space itself. Oues glanced toward the captain, reading the silent calculation behind Lowe's eyes. The mission below was unfolding in fragments, bursts of static, flashes of telemetry, and the occasional tremor from the planet's surface that registered even up here. "Ground team's signal is fading again," Riley reported quietly. "Interference from the storm front is worsening." Lowe didn't look away from the screen. "Hold position," he said. "We stay locked on until they're clear. No one gets left behind." The words carried through the bridge like a vow, steady and absolute. "Lieutenant Riley," he said, his voice low but commanding. "Anything on comms?" Lieutenant Riley shook her head, her fingers moving quickly over the console. "No, sir." Still nothing from the colony. Jamming's heavy. The only reason we know they're down there is because of the wreck we spotted. They landed that ship right on top of a human structure, crushing it completely. Captain Lowe's jaw tightened. "Those creatures have guts," he muttered, "but not much sense." "Sir," Lieutenant Penrose called out from the sensor station, "multiple contacts on port side." 4 main frigates inbound, followed by 3 smaller vessels. Smaller signature matching the one on the surface. They must have been running dark, hiding in the expanse. Captain Lowe's eyes narrowed. Frigates, heavier than us, armed to the teeth. Lieutenant Penrose nodded grimly. "And they're closing fast." He hesitated, then added, "Sir, can we get a visual?" "Are we sure they're really heading for the asteroids, or is this a feint?" Commander Oues's eyes narrowed. Typical alpha predator behavior, like a lion hunting its prey. The captain turned toward the forward viewport, the stars beyond shifting as the Sovereign Wrath altered course to intercept. Bring us 10 degrees starboard. Keep them in our sights. Penrose confirmed their heading. Penrose's fingers danced over the sensor controls. Confirmed, sir. They're not changing course. Still moving fast, straight for the asteroid belt. A tense silence settled as the realization dawned. Penrose spoke up again, voice tight. Sir, that sector's radiation is off the charts. Once they're in the belt, we'll lose all sensor contact. They know exactly what they're doing. Captain Lowe's expression darkened. This isn't a random raid. They're using the belt's interference to mask their approach. Someone tipped them off. This is a planned hit against us. How far to the asteroid field? The captain asked. About an hour, sir, Penrose replied, eyes glued to his readouts. Their trajectory puts them heading straight for it. Leave it to a nasty beast to smell blood, Captain Lowe said. How long until support? 5 to 6 hours minimum, Lieutenant Riley answered. But if we break radio silence, they'll hear us. Captain Lowe stood at the forward viewport, his posture tense, eyes distant as he weighed the enemy's maneuvers. Commander Oues, observing the captain's pensive silence, stepped closer and spoke quietly. I believe I am thinking what you are as well, sir, Oues said, his voice measured. This isn't just a coincidence. Their timing, the way they're using the asteroid belt's radiation to mask their approach, none of it feels random. Captain Lowe glanced at him, the edge of concern sharpening his features. You see it too, then? They're not just opportunists. This is orchestrated. Oues nodded, his gaze steady. It's as if they knew exactly where our sensors would fail. Someone tipped them off, or they've studied us far more closely than we realized. Lowe's jaw tightened as he pieced it together. They're not here by chance. This is a deliberate strike, an easy hit, or so they think. If they're this well prepared, we have to assume this is only the first move. Commander Oues replied. Agreed. We need to treat this as a planned invasion, not an isolated raid. Our response has to reflect that reality. The Sovereign Wrath's bridge was tense, the air thick with static and unease. As Captain Lowe and Commander Oues reviewed the tactical logs, the scale of the engagement became undeniable. 4 frigates and 3 heavy cruisers sent against a single outer colony was unprecedented. This isn't a raid, Lowe said, voice low. No radiant commander commits this much firepower to an early colony unless they're probing for something bigger. They're testing us, or preparing for a major assault. They must have been tipped off about our find or something worse. Commander Oues nodded, his expression grave. A force this size suggests a conclave is nearby. If a galaxy ship is present, it means they brought the full weight of their fleet. This is not a random attack. The colony was the bait. We are the target. Suddenly, the comm station flared with warning lights. Lieutenant Riley's voice cut through the tension. Sir, enemy jamming detected. We've lost direct contact with command. All standard channels are down. Captain Lowe's jaw clenched. Push-a-burst transmission. Priority black. Use the emergency quantum relay. It's hardened against jamming and guarantees delivery. Lieutenant Riley typed rapidly, routing the message through the backup system. Lowe dictated, his tone urgent. Fleet Command, this is Sovereign Wrath. Enemy jamming is active. We engaged 7 radiant warships, 4 frigates, 3 cruisers. This is not a minor incursion. We suspect a galaxy ship and full conclave in system. Expect additional waves. Request immediate reinforcements and deep reconnaissance. Repeat, this is a major offensive. Not a colony raid. Oues watched the transmission indicator flicker, then stabilize. The relay will reach them. Quantum systems bypass conventional jamming. The message will be received and flagged for immediate action. Captain Lowe turned to his crew, voice steady despite the threat. Maintain sensor sweeps. Prepare for further contact. We hold the line until help arrives. Oues stepped closer, his respect for Lowe evident. You acted without hesitation, Captain. The crew trusts you, and so do I. Whatever comes next, we face it together. The bridge settled into a focused silence, every officer aware that the battle was only beginning. Captain Lowe turned to Lieutenant Penrose, his tone unwavering. Lieutenant Penrose, open ship-wide comms. I want everyone to hear this. Lieutenant Penrose nodded, fingers flying over his console as he activated the vessel's internal communication system, ensuring every deck and compartment was linked in. Comms ready, Captain, he confirmed. Commander Oues stepped forward, his voice steady and resolute as it echoed throughout the ship. All non-essential crew remain in your quarters. All crew at battle stations, strap into your seats. It's going to get bumpy, but we have full confidence in our crew, and we will see tomorrow. Penrose then addressed the bridge staff, voice crisp. Staff at attention. Message from the captain. He relayed Captain Lowe's speech across the ship-wide channel, ensuring every crew member could hear him. Lowe's voice filled the Sovereign Wrath. We are about to face the enemy's combined assault. They will coordinate and strike with force, and it will take everything we have to hold. You are the best crew in the fleet, trained, disciplined, and ready. Trust your shipmates, hold your stations, and remember, together we will endure. Together we will see the dawn. On every deck, officers and crew nodded in solemn agreement, the intensity of the moment binding them together. Captain Lowe's lips curved into a hard smile. Radiants are the most dreaded species in the galaxy, a boogeyman scaring the masses. You instill fear into your kids at night with their tales. But they have never fought against the human navy before. They don't know our strategies. The lights dimmed, and a voice, smooth as silk and edged with static, filled the bridge. Captain Lowe, said LOKKA, the ship's artificial intelligence. You sound almost disappointed. Shall I assume we're done hiding? He didn't look up. You assume correctly. She purred. I was getting bored. The Radiants are broadcasting on a fractured command frequency, primitive but efficient. I can whisper into their channels if you like. Confuse them. Make them see ghosts. Do it, Captain Lowe said, and prep the forward batteries. Already warming them, Captain, LOKKA replied. I'll make sure they glow beautifully for you. Her holographic form appeared beside him, a figure of light and shadow, eyes like molten gold. She smiled, a predator's smile. Her holographic form appeared beside him, a figure of light and shadow, eyes like molten gold. She smiled, a predator's smile. Commander Oues tilted his head slightly, studying the AI's projection. You enjoy this too much, Loka. Her golden eyes flicked toward him. And you don't enjoy it enough, Commander. You hide your fire behind all that serenity. Oues's faint smile was unreadable. Fire burns brightest when it is controlled. Lieutenant Penrose commented, Frigates and cruisers have now altered course to now intercept with us. ETA, 2 minutes. Captain Lowe cut through their exchange. Arm external ordnance. Load 4 tactical nukes. Deploy them in a wide arc, 50,000 clicks ahead of our vector. Lieutenant Penrose hesitated. Sir, that's close to the outer wall of the asteroid field. Exactly, Captain Lowe said. They'll think we're retreating. Loka, set the detonators away from proximity and to remote with your AI code only, and override all safeties. Done, she replied, her tone a low hum of satisfaction. I'll guide them in. Like breadcrumbs for beasts. Oues's violet eyes glimmered faintly. The radiance will follow the scent of victory, he murmured, and choke on it. The destroyer's launch bays opened, releasing 4 sleek black warheads into the void. They drifted silently, invisible to radiant sensors. The enemy frigates surged forward, their hulls gleaming with crimson light. They moved like a pack of predators, closing in fast. They're accelerating, Loka murmured. Their bloodlust blinds them. They think you're running. Captain Lowe smiled faintly beneath his beard. Good. Let them come. You always did enjoy foreplay, she teased. Focus, Loka. Always, Captain. The lead Radiant frigate crossed the invisible perimeter. Captain Lowe slammed his palm down on the console. Detonate. Now, Lokka whispered. The void erupted in white and yellow fire. 4 miniature suns bloomed in perfect sequence, each detonation unleashing a torrent of energy that sent shockwaves, pure, invisible force, rippling through the black, their brilliance overwhelming every sensor. The first Radiant frigate was obliterated instantly, its hull torn asunder by the initial atomic blast. The explosion vaporized armor and superstructure in a fraction of a second, bathing the wreck in lethal X-rays and gamma rays that seared through metal and circuitry alike. Superheated debris and clouds of vaporized metal streaked outward in jagged arcs, trailing a corona of subatomic particles that danced and flickered in the aftermath. The violence of the explosion hurled what was left of the first ship, now a blazing skeletal ruin, directly into the second frigate with the force of a torpedo. The burning wreck smashed into the second ship's flank, its twisted prow digging deep into the hull. Metal shrieked and buckled as the ruined vessel gouged a ragged trench along the side, dragging itself sideways and carving through armor plating. The second frigate's shields, already glowing a desperate, blinding yellow from the atomic onslaught, flared and collapsed under the strain, energy fields distorting and flickering out as the impact tore through their last reserves. For a brief, harrowing moment, the 2 ships were locked together, one a flaming projectile, the other helpless to resist. Then, with a cataclysmic detonation, both ships erupted in a single blinding sphere of orange and white. The explosion expanded outward in a perfect, airless sphere, no mushroom cloud, but a shock wave of force. The blast unleashed a torrent of gamma rays and charged particles, bathing the battlefield in lethal light and electromagnetic fury. The combined mass vaporized in a heartbeat, scattering incandescent debris and a storm of subatomic energy across the void. Farther away, the 3rd and 4th frigates were caught in the blast radius. Their shields flared to a harsh, blinding yellow, energy fields shimmering and distorting as they absorbed the brunt of the atomic storm. Plates buckled and scorched, warning lights flickered across their battered exteriors, and minor hull damage became visible. Scorched armor, warped plating, and trails of venting gas. Their shields, though battered and close to failing, held for the moment, but the damage was clear and their defenses were visibly weakened. 2 confirmed kills, Loka said, her voice almost purring through the chaos. The others are wounded, angry, confused. They'll come for us harder now. Over comms, Locke started to say. They are very upset with you, Captain. They also don't know we can listen in on them, she said, with a smirk on her face. Captain Lowe grinned, the light of the explosions reflecting in his eyes. Then they'll die faster. The aftermath left the void littered with glowing debris and radioactive dust, the intensity of the detonations casting harsh, flickering shadows. Captain Lowe stood at the command platform, eyes fixed on the tactical display. Charge the main plasma cannon and count down after each use so we know when it will be ready again, he ordered. Already cycling, LOKKA replied. 1 shot per minute, but oh, what a shot it will be. The Sovereign Wrath's central spine glowed, energy building in its colossal plasma conduit. The weapon, a relic of Earth's last great war, designed to pierce planetary shields, was overkill against frigates. But now, it was a statement. Target the wounded one, Captain Lowe said softly. Let's make an example. Fire. The plasma cannon roared, a blinding lance of blue-white energy tearing through the void. It struck the radiant frigate dead center, vaporizing the inner hull and setting off another atomic blast. The shock wave rippled outward, scattering debris across the stars and sending a fresh pulse of radiation through the formation. Beautiful, LOKKA whispered. You still know how to make an entrance. Captain Lowe's voice was calm. Reload. We've most likely got some time before the next wave. The battered survivors would not attack immediately. The enemy formation would need time to regroup, coordinate, and marshal their remaining strength for a concentrated assault. Most likely, they would combine their forces and strike together, seeking to overwhelm the Sovereign Wrath with a unified, decisive blow. A maneuver that would require careful timing, communication, and tactical discipline. Commander Oues, standing at Lowe's side, watched the tactical display with a grim set to his jaw. They'll come all at once when they're ready. We should use every second to prepare. The surviving Radiant ships regrouped, their formation erratic, driven by fury rather than discipline. They're losing cohesion, AI Locker noted. Their alpha instincts are overriding command structure. Then we use it, Captain Lowe said. Draw them into the debris field. Make them chase us through their own wreckage. A delicious idea, she replied. I'll feed them false sensor echoes. Make them think we're limping. The Sovereign Wrath pivoted sharply, diving into the expanding cloud of debris. The Radiants followed, snarling through the void, their weapons firing wildly. They're blind, AI Locker said. They can't tell what's real anymore. Good, Captain Lowe said. Let's continue this dance. The Sovereign Wrath glided through the drifting graveyard of alien wreckage, her hull glowing faintly from residual heat. The last Radiant ship twisted desperately through the debris, its engines flaring erratically as it tried to escape. Locker sent so many false pings that the frigate was shooting at ghosts. Each phantom signal rippled through the void like echoes of the dead. Sensor ghosts flickering across the Radiant's targeting arrays, mimicking the heat signatures and movement of ships that no longer existed. Every few seconds, the enemy's scanners would lock onto one of Locker's illusions, firing blindly into the emptiness where only drifting wreckage remained. The AI wove the deception with surgical precision, using fragments of destroyed vessels as decoys, bending light and electromagnetic noise into convincing shapes. To the Radiant, it must have seemed as if the Sovereign Wrath had multiplied. A fleet of specters closing in from every direction, Let them chase shadows, Locker murmured through the comms, her tone almost amused. They can't hit what isn't real. Captain Lowe stood steady, eyes cold and focused. Lock on to that last frigate's drive core, he ordered. Let's end them properly. Loker's voice came through like silk over steel. Target acquired, their reactors running hot. One good strike at the stern should make quite the spectacle. Then give them a show, Captain Lowe said. The destroyer's forward batteries aligned, their barrels glowing with gathering plasma. Across the void, the reddened ship fired wildly, bolts of green energy streaking past the Sovereign Wrath and vanishing into the black. Fire our pulse weapons, save the plasma cannon, Captain Lowe commanded. The ship's pulse weapons unleashed a blinding volley. The first few shots grazed the alien vessel's armor, cutting deep glowing scars across its hull. Then one bolt struck true, dead center at the rear of the ship. For a heartbeat, everything went still. The Radiant's engines imploded. Then, deep within the alien vessel's lower decks, a blinding core of light erupted. The explosion began at the very bottom, where the main engines were housed, the force of the blast forcing its way upward with unstoppable violence. The stern of the ship ballooned outward, metal plating splitting and curling back, as superheated gases and plasma burst through every seam. A second later, the shock wave raced upward along the Radiant's spine. Bulkheads buckled and decks sheared apart, the explosion carving a jagged path through the vessel's interior. The ship's superstructure was split open like a shell, molten debris and burning fragments spewing into space. The force of the blast was so intense that it shredded the Radiant from the engines to the command tower, tearing compartments apart and hurling glowing wreckage outward in a widening arc. The vessel's silhouette was consumed by a storm of yellow and red fire, a cascade of energy that illuminated the void. The shock wave slammed into the Sovereign Wrath, rattling her from bow to stern. Shields flared, warning lights danced across the bridge, and the crew braced against the violent tremor. Through the viewport, the crew watched as the Radiant's remains drifted in a cloud of embers and molten metal. Its destruction total, the explosion's path a brutal testament to the power unleashed from the ship's core, rising from the engines and tearing everything above to shreds. "Shields holding," Lieutenant Penrose called out. "Minor overheating on the port side." Loker's holographic form shimmered beside the captain, her golden eyes reflecting the light of the explosion. "Beautiful," she whispered, "like a dying star." Captain Lowe watched the inferno fade into drifting embers. "Beautiful," he agreed quietly. "Now, let's make sure none of their friends bring more older brothers." The TDS Sovereign Wrath drifted through the graveyard of shattered, reddened frigates, her hull still glowing from the last exchange. The void was littered with wreckage, twisted metal, drifting bodies, and the fading light of dying reactors. "Multiple contacts ahead," Lieutenant Penrose reported. 3 Radiant heavy cruisers closing fast. They're cutting through the debris. Formation tight, weapons hot. Captain Lowe stood looking at the data from the viewpoint, eyes narrowing. They're angry. They want revenge for their dead. Beside him, Commander Oues stood motionless, tall, slender, his tan skin catching the flicker of the bridge lights. His violet eyes glowed faintly as they tracked the incoming ships on the tactical display. "They come in a trinity," he said softly. "Radiants favor symmetry in their hunts. The lead ship will bear the Alpha dash the others, its pack." Locker materialized beside them, her golden eyes gleaming. 3 against 1 again, Captain. You do have a way of attracting attention." Lowe's lips curved into a thin smile. "Let's make it worth their while." Bring us to attack speed. The Sovereign Wrath's engines flared, scattering debris as she surged forward. The alien cruisers broke through the haze ahead, massive, sleek, and bristling with energy. Their hulls pulsed with green light as their main batteries charged. Oues's voice was calm, almost melodic. They will attempt to encircle us. The Alpha will drive us toward the others. If we feign retreat, we can draw them into the wreckage and turn their own formation against them. Captain Lowe gave a short nod. You heard him. Helm, plot a partial retreat vector. Loka, feed them false telemetry. Make them think we're limping. Loka's smile sharpened. A little deception. How very human of you, Captain. Commander Oues inclined his head slightly. Deception is not human. It is survival. The first volley came without warning. Bolts of emerald plasma streaked through the wreckage, detonating against the drifting remains of their fallen kin. Explosions rippled through the debris field, sending jagged fragments spinning toward the human destroyer. Evasive action, Captain Lowe barked. The Sovereign Wrath rolled hard to port, weaving between tumbling wreckage and incoming fire. A piece of alien hull the size of a shuttle grazed the ship's flank, scraping sparks across her shields. Shields at 98%, Lieutenant Riley called out. They're trying to pin us against the debris. Let them try, Captain Lowe said. Loka, prepare for a sudden deceleration on my mark. The alien cruisers pressed their attack, closing the distance. Their plasma fire turned the void into a storm of green lightning. The Sovereign Wrath dove through it, her hull glowing from near misses, her crew gripping their stations as the ship shuddered. Captain, they're tightening formation, Commander Oues warned. They're going to box us in. Good, Captain Lowe said quietly. That's exactly what I want. The alien ships drew closer, their formation narrowing to a spearhead. The lead vessel's engines flared bright as it lined up for a killing shot. Now, Captain Lowe commanded, cut engines. Full deceleration. The Sovereign Wrath's thrusters flared, then abruptly died. The sudden drop in speed threw the alien formation off balance. The lead cruiser overshot, the others scrambling to adjust. Hard starboard turn. The destroyer pivoted sharply, her hull groaning under the strain. The maneuver was brutal. The inertial dampeners screamed, and the crew held fast as the ship twisted through the wreckage. The lead alien cruiser fired its main batteries. A full salvo meant for the Sovereign Wrath. But the human ship was already clear. The plasma bolt slammed into the cruiser beside it, punching through its armor and damaging the ship, causing a massive explosion. The explosion tore through the debris field, scattering molten fragments in every direction. One down, Lieutenant Penrose shouted. Don't get comfortable, Captain Lowe said. 2 more incoming. The remaining cruisers split apart, one circling wide, the other diving low through the wreckage. Their plasma fire converged on the Sovereign Wrath, hammering her shields. Forward pulse cannons, target the one below, Captain Lowe ordered. Target locked, Artificial Intelligence Loka replied. Firing. The destroyer's forward cannons unleashed a volley of pulse cannon shots. The shots slammed into the lower cruiser's shields, tearing them apart in bursts of light. The alien ship retaliated immediately, firing a concentrated beam that grazed the Wrath's port side. Port armor breach, Lieutenant Riley shouted. Deck 9 venting atmosphere. Seal it and keep firing, Captain Lowe snapped. The Sovereign Wrath's guns roared again. The second volley tore through the alien cruiser's exposed hull, ripping it open from bow to stern. The ship convulsed, then exploded, scattering burning fragments through the void. The Sovereign Wrath closed in on the Radiant formation, the last cruiser looming ahead through drifting fields of wreckage. At point-blank range, Captain Lowe gave the order, LOKKA. Fire the main plasma cannon. Loka's countdown ended, but as the weapon discharged, a sudden explosion from the reaction going full critical on the shattered enemy cruiser rocked the Sovereign Wrath. The plasma beam veered wide, missing its mark by kilometers as the ship lurched violently. Warnings blared, and the crew scrambled to stabilize the destroyer. "Main cannon missed, Captain," LOKKA reported, her voice tight. Commander Oues' voice crackled over comms from tactical. "That debris field's hotter than we thought. Helm, keep us clear and ready for another shot." Forced to circle the engagement zone, the Sovereign Wrath's main gun needed precious moments to recharge and realign. In the meantime, the Redent cruiser seized the opportunity, unleashing a barrage of plasma fire. The enemy shots hammered the shields, shaking the human ship with each impact. "Shields holding, but we can't take too many more hits," Lieutenant Penrose shouted. Captain Lowe's jaw tightened. "Return fire with pulse cannons. Keep them busy." The Sovereign Wrath's pulse batteries opened up, launching precise volleys that scored deep into the Radiant cruiser's armor. Each shot was timed between enemy barrages, targeting exposed systems and weapon mounts. The human ship twisted and rolled, dodging the worst of the incoming fire, while their own gunners found their marks. Commander Oues' voice cut in again. "Pulse fire is disrupting their targeting, Captain." "We're getting lucky. Minimal hull damage so far. Recommend we keep up the pressure until the main gun is ready." "Agreed," Lowe replied. "Loka, status on the main cannon." "Charging, Captain." "Ready for countdown on your mark." The Sovereign Wrath danced through the debris and enemy fire, battered but holding together. Their pulse cannons continued to hammer the Radiant cruiser, tearing away armor and disabling gun turrets. The humans were riding the edge of disaster, but luck and skill kept them alive. Each well-placed shot from their pulse batteries, further crippling the enemy. As the main plasma cannon came online once more, the crew braced for the final exchange. Battered but unbroken, the bridge alive with the tension of survival and the hope of a decisive blow. The last Radiant cruiser came straight on, its hull glowing with energy as it charged its main cannon. "Locker," Captain Lowe said, "bring the main gun online." "Charging," she replied, "but they'll fire first." A rising hum filled the Sovereign Wrath as the plasma cannon drew power, the deck vibrating beneath the crew's feet. Locker's holographic form shimmered on the bridge, her golden eyes focused and unblinking. "Main plasma cannon charging. Countdown commencing in 5. On the view screen, the alien ship's cannon began to glow, green plasma building at its muzzle. 4. Power conduits throbbed with energy, bridge lights dimming as the cannon's capacitors reached critical levels. 3. The Radiant cruiser's main weapon flared, energy arcing along its hull. 2. The alien vessel unleashed its plasma beam, a blinding lance of green energy that slammed into the Sovereign Wrath's shields, flaring them white-hot. Alarms shrieked. The destroyer bucked violently, systems overloading. 1. Locker's voice cut through the chaos. "Main cannon at maximum charge." Captain Lowe's fist came down. "Fire!" The Sovereign Wrath's forward plasma cannon erupted, releasing a blinding column of blue-white energy. The human beam met the alien plasma shot head-on, colliding in a brilliant explosion that lit the void. For a split second, the two beams struggled, energy writhing and crackling as they fought for dominance. The human plasma beam surged forward, overwhelming the Radiant's shot and punching through the drifting wreckage of the second cruiser. It speared clean through the last Radiant ship's hull, bursting out the far side in a cascade of molten light. The alien vessel twisted once, then detonated in a brilliant explosion that lit the void like a sunrise. The shock wave slammed into the Sovereign Wrath, rattling her from bow to stern. Shields flared, warning lights danced across the bridge, and the crew braced against the violent tremor. Through the viewport, the crew watched as the Radiant's remains drifted in a cloud of embers and molten metal, its destruction total, the explosion's path a brutal testament to the power unleashed from the ship's core, rising from the engines and tearing everything above to shreds. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the bridge erupted in cheers. Crew members clapped shoulders, voices rising in exhausted triumph. Sparks still fell from the ceiling, consoles flickered, and the ship's hull groaned under the strain. But they were alive. Locker's holographic form appeared beside the captain, her golden eyes reflecting the fading fires outside. 3 cruisers destroyed, she said softly. Minimal survivors detected. I'd call that a victory. Captain Lowe stood, his expression calm, but his voice carrying quiet pride. We're not dead yet. That's victory enough. He turned toward the viewport, watching the last embers of the battle fade among the drifting wreckage of the Radiant fleet. Plot a course out of the field, Captain Lowe said, before someone else decides to avenge them. The Sovereign Wrath's engines flared once more, pushing her through the debris and into open space, battered, scarred, but unbroken. The cheers of her crew echoed through the bridge, a defiant sound against the endless dark. The last Radiant cruiser's wreckage drifted away, glowing embers fading into the endless dark. The bridge of the Sovereign Wrath was silent, except for the soft hum of the ship's systems and the faint crackle of static from damaged relays. Captain Lowe stood motionless, eyes fixed on the viewport, watching the remnants of battle dissolve into the void. The adrenaline was ebbing, leaving behind the heavy stillness that always followed survival. Then Lieutenant Riley's voice broke the silence. Sir, picking up new contacts. 5 more short-range ships, same signature as the ones that landed on the planet. And 1 larger vessel. Unidentified. Looks like that's the last of the energy signatures. Captain Lowe's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the field of drifting wreckage. I've got a bad feeling about this. He turned slightly toward the glowing form beside him. Locker, how many nuclear weapons do we have left? The AI paused, her golden eyes flickering in mock contemplation. Enough to make a very bright point, or a very short argument, Captain. Captain Lowe smirked. Then let's make sure they get the point. A tense silence lingered, broken only by the low murmur of consoles and the faint vibration of the engines. The crew exchanged wary glances, each one feeling the weight of what might come next. Then Commander Oues's voice came through, rough and edged with disbelief. Captain, I'm running the scans again. That big one, it's a Conclave clan ship. This confirms it. This is no small raid. If the stories are true, if they're the boogeyman, then this is the hell they spawn from. The words hung in the air, heavy and electric. No one spoke. The bridge lights flickered as the ship adjusted course, the glow of the planet now framed against the looming shadow of the approaching vessel. Captain Lowe's jaw tightened, his gaze hardening into steel. Then we show them what happens when nightmares come for humanity. The Sovereign Wrath surged forward, engines burning bright against the dark, a lone spear of defiance racing toward the storm. Episode 3, A Prometheus Encounter.